Yeah, the Babylonians destroyed Jerusalem and took the Judite elites into exile, creating the supporter religion with Israelites in Babylon, Egypt, and the land. After Persia conquered Babylon in 539 BCE, Cyrus the Greek, or the Great, allowed some of the exiles to return to Jerusalem, now the seat of a Persian province of Judah. Cyrus the Great of Persia ruled from 550 to 530 BCE. Purported edicts from Persian emperors that you have in the Bible. Biblical texts in the books of Ezra, Chronicles, and Esdras record multiple decrees from Cyrus and his successors allowing the exiles to return and even commanding them to rebuild the temple. The historicity of these edicts as we have them remains disputed. An example is found in Ezra 1:1-4. In the first year of Cyrus' kingdom of Persia, he made a proclamation throughout all his kingdom, and also in writing, saying, Second Temple history, it says, the original Second Temple constructed by Zerubbabel was in 516 BCE. In 539 BCE, Persia conquers Babylon. Unlike Assyria and Babylon, even the Hittites, the Persians didn't care what gods they worshipped because of the larger vast territory they held. Reported edicts from Persian emperors, biblical texts in the books of Ezra, Chronicles, and Esdras record multiple decrees from Cyrus and his successors allowing the exiles to return and even commanding them to rebuild the temple. The historicity of these edicts as we have then remains disputed. Babylonian influence on the exiles. Zerubbabel. Early modern engraving of Zerubbabel, the Davidic governor of Persia, Judea, the prince of the house of David, who is appointed to lead the Persian province of Judah, the district on Jerusalem, was named Zerubbabel. The name likely derives from the Babylonian Zerubbabel, meaning seed of Babylon. After 50 years in Babylon, the exilic community here has undergone significant Babylonization. Return of the exiles in the Persian period. The city of Jerusalem had been destroyed along with its temple by the Babylonians, and the lands of the former kingdom of Judah had been devastated. Despite the idea expressed in the decrees as we have them in the Bible, Zerubbabel and the exiles had limited resources to rebuild the temple and city walls as they operated under Persian rule. It says here, Samaritans offered to help the exiles. In the book of Ezra here from chapter 4 verse 2, it says, They, the Samaritans, approached Zerubbabel and the heads of the families and said to them, Let us build with you, for we worship your God as you do. Uh, it says right here, Samaria, the province north of Judah, had been the heartland of the kingdom of Israel, destroyed by the Assyrians in 720 BCE. The Samaritans saw the returning Judean exiles as kin who worshiped the same God of Israel, and so they offered to assist in rebuilding the Jerusalem temple according to the book of Ezra. The returning exiles reject the Samaritans. However, according to the book of Ezra, Zerubbabel and the returned exiles rejected any assistance in this avowed kinship with the northerners, whom they portrayed as the adversaries of Judah and Benjamin, despite their offer to help. The partisan explanation put into the mouths of the Samaritans is the Judean claim that Samaritans were not descended from ancient Israel, but rather are descendants of transportees brought to the land by King Esarhaddon of Syria. The rejection gives birth to an ethnic rivalry. The returned exiles reject the Samaritans. However, according to the book of Ezra, uh, so let's go into some history on that. This is yeah, once again, Ezra came after the temple was completed. This is Ezra chapter 4, verse 23. Then, as soon as the copy of the letter from King Artaxerxes was read in the presence of Rehum, Shimshai the scribe, and their colleagues, they proceeded promptly to the Jews in Jerusalem and stopped them with the dread of armed force. So the work on the temple of the power in Jerusalem came to a halt. It remained halted until the second year of the reign of King Darius of Persia. Ezra 5 and verse 3. At the time, Tattenai, governor of Trans-Euphrates, Shephar Bozani, and their colleagues came to them and asked, "Who gave you authority to rebuild this temple and to complete the structure?" For they also asked them, "What are the names of the men who are building this edifice?" 5. But God was watching over the elders of Judah, and they were not stopped until a report could be dispatched to Darius and a letter could be sent back concerning this. The governor Shepharzar, whatever his name was, stopped the temple being built. It says, no, Governor Shepharzar did not ultimately stop the temple from being built, although he and his associate governor Tattenai initially questioned and temporarily halted the work. They were ultimately ordered by King Darius to allow the projects to continue, as King Cyrus had already issued a decree permitting its Shafar Bozenai and his colleagues then helped with the construction following the king's orders. He was a high-ranking Persian official, likely the chief aide or secretary, who helped investigate the rebuilding of the temple in Jerusalem and was involved in the correspondence with King Darius' rule. Shefar Bozenai was a Persian official who, along with Tattenai, questioned the Jews about rebuilding the temple and sent a letter to King Darius for his command. Ezra 6, I hereby give orders that if anyone changes this directive, a beam is to be pulled out from his house, and he is to be raised up and impaled on it, and his house is to be reduced to a rubbish heap for this indiscretion. May God, who makes his name to reside there, overthrow any king or nation who reaches out to cause such a change, so as to destroy the temple of God in Jerusalem. I, Darius, have given orders to let them be carried out with precision. It says the subheading reads the temple is finally dedicated. 13. Then Tatanai, governor of Trans-Euphrates, Shephar Bozanar, and their colleagues acted accordingly with precision, just as Darius the king had given instructions. 14. The elders of the Jews continued building and prospering, while at the same time Haggai the prophet and Zechariah the son of Iddo continued prophesying. They built and brought it to completion by the command of the God of Israel and by the command of Cyrus and Darius and Artaxerxes, king of Persia. 15. They finished this temple on the third day of the month Adar, which is the 6th year of the reign of King Darius. Con, So I googled this. Was the second temple completed on the Passover in Ezra 6? As it says here, no, the second temple was not completed on Passover. It was completed in the month of Adar, and Passover celebration happened about a month and a half after the completion. According to Ezra 6:15, the temple was finished on the third day of Adar, which corresponds to late February or early March. The dedication and subsequent celebration of Passover are described in Ezra 6:19-22, which took place during the following month of Nisan. Completion: the temple was finished on the third day of the month Adar in the 6th year of King Darius' reign. Approximately 515 BC, dedication of the house of God was dedicated after its completion. Passover. The Passover celebration took place on the 14th day of the first month of Nisan or Aviv, which was the month after Adar. This is verse 16. And second Ezra 6:16. The people of Israel, the priests, the Levites, and the rest of the exiles observed the dedication of this temple of God with joy. For the dedication of this temple of God, they offered 100 bulls, 200 rams, 400 lambs, and 12 male goats for the sin of all Israel. According to the number of the tribes of Israel, they appointed the priests by their divisions and the Levites by their divisions over the worship of the power Yahweh at Jerusalem in accord with the book of Moses. 19. The exiles observed the Passover on the 14th day of the first month. The priests and the Levites had purified themselves, every last one of them, and they all were ceremonially pure. They sacrificed the Passover lamb for all exiles, for their colleagues, the priests, and for themselves. The Israelites who were returning from the exile ate it, along with all those who had joined them, and separated themselves from the uncleanness of the nations of the land, to seek the Lord, the power God of Israel. They observed the feast of unleavened bread for 7 days with joy, for the Lord had given them joy, and had changed the opinion of the king of Assyria toward them, so that he assisted them in the work of the temple of the power, and the power Yahweh Messiah of Israel. Yeah, so as we see there, the Lord came true for them and helping them build. It's explain put here. Explain Ezra 6:14-15. The confusion in Ezra 6:14-15 stems from the mention of Artaxerxes immediately after a verse that states the temple was finished in the 6th year of King Darius' reign. Even though Artaxerxes reigned much later, the confusion is resolved by the understanding that the text intentionally uses Artaxerxes to bridge the narrative to the next section of the book, which is set during his reign, and to show that God's providence continues through different rulers. Some interpretations also suggest that Artaxerxes in this passage may be a mistaken reference to Darius, or that Xerxes, the successor to Darius, adopted the name Artaxerxes to rewrite history. The inclusion of Artaxerxes here does not imply he directly contributed to the temple's construction. Instead, it reflects that the building was carried out in alignment with the decrees or support of these successive Persian kings at various stages of Jewish restoration. Cyrus initiated the return and allowed the rebuilding. Darius reaffirmed and funded the work, and Artaxerxes later supported further restoration efforts, such as the rebuilding of Jerusalem's wall and reinforcing temple resources. The reference to Artaxerxes acknowledges the ongoing Persian royal support for the Jewish restoration project beyond the temple's physical completion. Now here's chapter 7 of Ezra. It says Ezra chapter 7 does not chronologically come after chapter 6 in the book of Ezra. Chapter 1 through 6 narrate the first return of the exiles led by Zerubbabel, focusing on the rebuilding of the temple, which was completed in Darius' 6th year, around 516 BCE. Then chapter 7 to 10 describe a later return led by Ezra himself, which took place in the 7th year of King Artaxerxes, around 458 BCE. About 58 years after the temple was completed. This arrangement reflects the historical sequence of events: first the temple's restoration and dedication, chapters 1 to 6, then Ezra's mission to establish religious reform and community restoration, chapters 7 to 10. Thus, Ezra 7 narratively and chronologically follows the events of chapter 6, and continuing the story of Jewish restoration during the Persian period. So here I go with Xerxes the first Artaxerxes. Xerxes the first and Artaxerxes are not the same person. Xerxes the first, also known as Xerxes the Great, was the fourth king of the Achaemenid Empire, reigning from 486 BC until his assassination in 465 BC. Artaxerxes the first was his son and successor, becoming the fifth king and ruling from 465 to 424. So Xerxes the first was the father, and Artaxerxes the first was his son, who followed him as king. They are distinct individuals in Persian history. Yeah, so Ezra came after the book of Esther here. Artaxerxes was the son of Ahasuerus, also known as Xerxes. So I googled, here is Artaxerxes, the king mentioned in Esther. Artaxerxes came after, was the son of Xerxes once again. The king mentioned in the book of Esther is called Ahasuerus in the Hebrew text. I think Ahasuerus is the Greek way of saying Xerxes, or it's the Assyrian way, and the Greek way is Xerxes. Traditionally, Ahasuerus is widely identified as Xerxes the first, who ruled the Persian Empire from 486 to 465 BC. However, some ancient traditions and sources, including the Greek Septuagint translation, the Latin Vulgate, and certain Jewish Midrashic texts, identify this king as Artaxerxes I, the son of Xerxes I. Most modern scholars favor the identification of Esther's king as Xerxes I because the historical character and reign of Xerxes match the biblical narrative, including details such as the setting of Susa and the king's lavish banquets. Is Artaxerxes the king mentioned in Esther once again? I think that was the same thing. I just read that. Lavish banquets and temperament Artaxerxes the first, his son, is more prominently mentioned in other biblical texts such as in Ezra and Nehemiah, and is known for his more peaceful and tolerant reign towards the Jews. In summary, while some traditions may name Artaxerxes as Esther's king, the majority scholarly view in historical context support that Esther's king Ahasuerus corresponds to Xerxes the First, not Artaxerxes the First. Artaxerxes the First was the son of Xerxes and is generally not equated with the king in Esther, but is important in later biblical history related to the Jewish return to Jerusalem. So now this is Ezra 7. Its subheading is the arrival of Ezra, chapter 7, verse 1. Now after these things had happened during the reign of King Artaxerxes of Persia, Ezra came up from Babylon. Ezra was the son of Seraiah, who was the son of Azariah, who was the son of Hilkiah, who was the son of Shalom, who was the son of Zadok, who was the son of Ahitub, who was the son of Amariah, who was the son of Azariah, who was the son of Marioth, who was the son of Zerahiah, who was the son of Uzziah, who was the son of Bukai. Verse 5, who was the son of Abishua, who was the son of Phinehas, who was the son of Eleazar, who was the son of Aaron the chief priest. 6. This Ezra is the one who came up from Babylon. He was the scribe who was skilled in the law of Moses, which the Lord God of Israel had given. The king supplied him with everything he requested, for the hand of the Lord his God was on him. 7. In the 7th year of King Artaxerxes, Ezra brought up to Jerusalem some of the Israelites and some of the priests, the Levites, the attendants, the gatekeepers, and the temple servants. 8. He entered Jerusalem in the 5th month on the 7th year of the king. On the first day of the 1st month, he had determined to make the ascent from Babylon, and on the first day of the 5th month, he arrived at Jerusalem, for the good hand of his power was on him. 10. Now Israel had dedicated himself to the study of the law of the Lord, to its observance, and to teaching its statutes and judgments in Israel. Our subheading is God gives official endorsement to Ezra's mission. Verse 11. What follows is a copy of the letter that King Artaxerxes gave to Ezra, the priestly scribe. Ezra was a scribe in matters pertaining to the commandments of the Lord and the statutes over Israel. Verse 12. Artaxerxes, king of kings, to Ezra, the priest, and scribe of the law of the God of heaven, I have now issued a decree that anyone in my kingdom from the people of Israel, even the priests and Levites who wishes to do so, may go up with you to Jerusalem. 14. You are authorized by the king and his 7 advisors to inquire concerning Judah and Jerusalem according to the law of your God, which is in your possession. 15. And to bring silver and gold which the king and his advisors have freely contributed to the God of Israel, who resides in Jerusalem. 21. I, King Artaxerxes, hereby issue orders to all the treasures of Trans-Euphrates that you precisely execute all that Ezra, the priestly scribe of the law of the God of heaven, may request of you. 22. Up to 100 talents of silver, 100 quarts of wheat, 100 baths of wine, 100 baths of olive oil, and unlimited salt. Everything that the God of heaven has required or should be precisely done for the temple of the God of heaven. Why should there be wrath against the empire of the king and his sons? 24. Furthermore, be aware of the fact that you have no authority to impose tax, tribute, or toll on any of the priests and Levites, the musicians, the doorkeepers, the temple servants, or the attendants of the temple of this God. 27. Blessed be the Lord God of our fathers, who so moved in the heart of the king to so honor the temple of the Lord which is in Jerusalem. 28. He has also conferred his favor on me before the king, his advisors, and all the influential leaders of the king. I gained strength as the hand of the Lord, my power was on me, and I gathered leaders from Israel to go up with me. This is chapter 8. The exiles traveled to Jerusalem. Verse 15, I had them assembled at the canal that flows toward Ahava, and we camped there for 3 days. I observed that the people and the priests were present, but I found no Levites there. 16, so I sent for Eleazar and Ariel, Shemaiah, Elnathan, Jerib, Elnathan, Nathan, Zechariah, and Meshullam, who were leaders, and Joiarib and Elnathan, who were the teachers. 17, I sent them to Iddu, who was a leader in the place called Cassiopeia. I told him what to say to Iddu and its relatives, who were the temple servants in Cassiopeia, so they would bring us attendance for the temple of our God. 18. Due to the fact that the good hand of our God was on us, they brought us a skilled man from the descendants of Mahli, the son of Levi, son of Israel. This man was Sherebiah, who was accompanied by his sons and brothers, 18 men. 19. And Hashaiah, along with Jeshaiah from the descendants of Merari, with his brothers and their sons, 20 men, 20 and some of the temple servants that David and his officials had established for the work of the Levites, 220 of them. They were all designated by name. 21. I called for a fast there by the Ahava canal, so that we might humble ourselves before our God and seek from him a safe journey for us, our children, and all our property. I was embarrassed to request soldiers and horsemen from the king to protect us from the enemy along the way, because we had said to the king, the good hand of our God is on everyone who is seeking him, but his great anger is against everyone who forsakes him. 23. So we fasted and prayed to our God about this, and he answered us. Then I set apart 12 of the leading priests, together with Sherebiah, Hashabiah, and 10 of their brothers. 25. And I weighed out to them the silver, the gold, and the vessels intended for the temple of our God, items that the king, his advisors, his officials, and all Israel who were present had contributed. 26. I weighed out to them 650 talents of silver, silver vessels worth 100 talents, 100 talents of gold. 27. Verse 27. 20 gold bowls worth 1,000 darics, and 2 exquisite vessels of gleaming bronze, as valuable as gold. 28. Then I said to them, you are holy to the Lord, just as these vessels are holy. The silver and the gold are a voluntary offering to the Lord, the God of your fathers. 29. Be careful with them and protect them until you weigh them out before the leading priests and the Levites and the family leaders of Israel in Jerusalem, in the storehouses of the temple of the Lord. 35. The exiles who were returning from the captivity offered burnt offerings to the God of Israel, 12 bulls for all Israel, 96 rams, 77 male lambs, along with 12 male goats as a sin offering. All this was a burnt offering to the Lord. 36. Then they presented the decrees of the king to the king's satraps and to the governors of Trans-Euphrates, who assisted the people in the temple of God. Ask. Okay, so then I went to perplexity, which is like ChatGPT basically. And I asked, what did Ezra do? Ezra was a Jewish scribe and priest who played a crucial role in the return of the Jewish people from Babylon, long exile, to Jerusalem. His key contributions included reestablishing the Jewish community and religious practices after the exile. Emphasizing strict adherence to the Torah, the law of Moses. He is especially known for leading a public reading and explanation of the Torah to the people, fostering a renewal of covenant and spiritual revival. Israel also instituted reforms that called for separation from foreign influences, the renewal of the covenant, and renewed commitment to God's commandments. He is credited with establishing the foundations for post-exilic Judaism, including shaping Jewish religious life centered on Torah study and obedience. Furthermore, he helped establish the Great Assembly, which influenced Jewish traditions, prayers, and the canonization and preservation of biblical texts. Ezra's leadership, teachings, and reforms ensured that the continuity and spiritual identity of the Jewish people after the exile. I put why did Ezra want to go back to Israel? Ezra wanted to go back to Israel primarily to fulfill God's plan of restoring the Jewish people back to their homeland. After the Babylonian exile, his heart was with his brethren in Jerusalem. He was deeply committed to re-establishing the Jewish community according to the Torah, restoring spiritual and religious life in the land of Israel. Ezra was motivated by a strong desire to teach and enforce adherence to the law of Moses, to reform the people who had intermarried with foreign wives, and to revive the covenantal relationship with the power. The Persian king Artaxerxes authorized Ezra's return and even empowered him with authority to govern religious and civil matters in Jerusalem. Ezra and many others left behind the comforts of Babylon to face the hardships of rebuilding and renewing their ancient homeland. Driven by faithfulness to God's promises and a vision for a restored community centered on the Torah, Ezra's reforms and religious actions focused on restoring the Jewish community's spiritual and religious purity after the Babylonian exile. His key reforms including restoration of the law. Ezra discovered that many Israelites, including priests and Levites, had intermarried with surrounding pagan nations, violating the law of Moses. He responded with mourning and prayer, confessing the people's sins and seeking God's mercy. Public reading of the law. Ezra organized a public reading of the Torah to the people, accompanied by explanations from the Levites to ensure understanding and re-establish the law's central role in the communal life. Covenant renewal. The public reading led to a national recommitment to God's commandments, with the community renewing their covenant to separate from foreign influences and obey the law strictly. Ezra's genealogy and priestly status further legitimized his mission. Before departure, Ezra and his group were prepared to pray and fast and relying on God's protection for their journey. What evidence supports Artaxerxes authorizing Ezra historically? Scholarly analysis and historical context suggest that Artaxerxes' decree was authentic and consistent with Persian imperial policy, which involved appointing officials to govern local populations according to their laws and customs. The decree granted Ezra tax exemptions, funding and authority beyond the Euphrates River, indicating significant royal confidence in his God-given wisdom. Although no external Persian royal inscription matching the decree has been found, the form and substance of the decree align well with known Persian administration and documented practices of royal grants and commissions. Furthermore, historical evidence such as Persian control over the region and the sacking of Babylon lend credibility to the chronological placement of Ezra's return under Artaxerxes I in 458 BC. This decree is unique as an Aramaic royal correspondence preserved in the biblical text, regarded by many scholars as a genuine official document.